That was great, and it just shows the value of the amateur botanists in adding. Okay, now we've got a request to turn the aircon down. You all happy with that? Democracy, I know, is overrated, so we'll switch it off for a little while. Right, quick mass exodus, move between. Are we all alright? Great. Okay, thanks. Next, we've got Karen Zunckel from Zunckel Ecological and Environmental Services. And she's going to speak to us about Africa's finest, the most responsible, sustainable safari destinations in Africa. And going by that picture, I wouldn't mind being there.
Afternoon, everyone. Yeah, it's been an amazing project, and I think Africa, for most of us, is just the epitome of where we really want to be. It's in our hearts and souls. There's still vast places, and parts of Africa are the last places on Earth where you can still see the tableau of what we often refer to as the Garden of Eden, a place where wild animals, pre-agricultural and pre-industrial people live in some sort of semblance of balance. The Green Safari Africa project is the brainchild of David Bristow, who's a well-known travel writer, and Colin Bell, former Wilderness Safaris founder, and was conceived as a means to identify those tourism operators in Africa that are truly sustainable and to provide a platform from which these can be documented in a lavish coffee table book to be titled Africa's Finest, Most Responsible Sustainable Safari Destinations in Africa. It's an entirely independent and privately funded project, independence being a pivotal part of the project in establishing a benchmark for the industry. We, that's Kevin and myself, form part of the technical committee for the project. We compiled specific Green Safari Africa criteria, largely based on the Global Sustainable Tourism Criteria of 2009 and the IUCN Best Practice Guidelines on Sustainable Tourism in Protected Areas of 2002, and subsequent revision, which is currently in process, which we've provided input into as well. What you see here is a self-assessment form which went out to all of the tourism operators who either nominated themselves or were nominated for inclusion in the book, and is basically divided into environment, which is nature and conservation, so there's that aspect covered, the operation, which we call the tourist, and community, social responsibility. And what we found important really also is commerce. Are there leakages? Is the money that's being generated by the operation coming back into the host country, or is it going into a Swiss bank account? In some cases that was an immediate out for some tour operators. And then of course also in terms of international best practice, the entire environmental sustainability with the umbrella. And there we look at whether the operation has been certified, whether they have won certain awards, and just general sustainability of the lodge. We've also formed part of the assessment team, visiting many of these far-flung places on a country-by-country basis. But there were others on the assessment team, just to mention them: Lisa Scriven, formerly of Fair Trade, South Africa; Ian Davidson, senior bird guide; Russell Yao, who's well known, I think, to the tourism industry and is a guest house owner in Cape Town; Simon Byron, lodge manager in Botswana; and Tony Routledge, who's a retired director of Nedbank and a seasoned traveller who loves Africa. So basically we assessed these lodges in context, and it was incredibly difficult when we came together as a team in Joburg at the end of last year to try and decide who makes the final cut, because in many cases we weren't comparing apples with apples, this was apples and pears. So we had to wade through some of the subjectivity to come up with our final list, and I'll speak more to that. We met some really inspiring people along the way. This young lady is a waitress at a lodge in Mozambique. She moved to a village close by to do a job, and in the village she found a whole bunch of orphans wandering around, and as a young 25-year-old woman, she then taught them a skill that she knows, making recycled paper, which she then sells in the lodge, and that helps her to generate income to look after 8 orphans herself. Just some really amazing stories and people that we meet along the way. One important aspect of the Green Safari Africa project has been the bringing together of like-minded tour operators, so that they might, on the one hand, enjoy the wider recognition, while on the other, benefit from better occupancies as a result of their commendable work. Sad then that some of the most prehistoric creatures, like rhinos, are now hanging to the last threads of survival, but heartening also that there are some safari operators and conservationists working selflessly to protect them and other species through the enterprise of ecotourism. Many operators within the industry have responded to this with a genuine commitment to become sustainable, with some almost being completely self-reliant, which was really great to see. And it's been eye-opening for us to reveal the unscrupulous practices, on the other hand, of those who bandy about empty awards and achievements, as well as to expose the uncaring and unwitting of the safari industry. So it's been with much satisfaction that we are able to recognize those who walk the responsible walk and who talk the responsible talk. Through this book, it is hoped that others would be inspired to follow suit, while those who have not met the criteria receive the necessary accolades. So those who do meet the criteria receive the necessary accolades and encouragement to continue their good work, and those that don't are simply noted by their exclusion. We are living in precarious times. Green technology is now sufficiently advanced and cost-effective for all safari operators to embrace. The days of lodges, even those in remote areas, continuing to spew out tons of carbon each day by running generators for air-conditioned tents, are long over. There is no longer any financial or technical excuse for lodges to continue to pollute the planet. Ecotourism has become a word that is used by both naive or cynical, or to be more kind than media savvy, lodge and safari operators to boost their images and sell any nature experience at any cost. Too many tourism companies have now soiled that word, labeling themselves ecotourism destinations, purely on the basis of their proximity to protected areas. So real ecotourism operators rather speak of responsible and sustainable tourism or conservation tourism, meaning basically the same thing. And what we found, as I said earlier on, is that there's many shades of green. Beyond the designer chic dining rooms and sumptuous bedrooms of many of today's game lodges is a back of house area that few guests ever see, although they should. This is where the staff live, and in this particular private island in just off Mozambique in the Carimbas is a true example of some really fantastic work where extensive rainwater harvesting is taking place to add to their desalination plant that they're dependent on. It's where food is stored and prepared, in some cases very well, others really shockingly. It's where energy is created and waste is produced. More often than not, this is where the greasy and oily game drive vehicles are fixed. What it looks like back there differs vastly from place to place. And this, more than just about any factor, reveals what the character of the lodge is, whether it has a black heart or green. During our investigations, we found standards varied considerably, and none more so, as I've said, than in the staff areas. We found some lodge owners were stuck in old colonial, or worse, apartheid ways of doing things with a discernible master and servant mentality. Yet again, some others had embraced modern standards and treated staff as partners. One lodge in South Africa's Malikwe Game Reserve, that unfortunately didn't make the final cut for other reasons, voluntarily made their staff 25% partners, now owners of the operation. To get to the core of an enterprise, we found the best place to look was around the staff quarters. Were they hidden away and shameful? Did they have the necessary comforts and modern facilities? Was it in fact a decent place to live? Given that many lodges have a staff-to-guest ratio of 3 or even 4 staff per guest, the staff had a bigger environmental impact in some cases than the guests. When measuring this, what we had to bear in mind was that in some cases, for example in the Maasai areas in Kenya, the staff were often steeped in tribal ways and preferred to live in what a Westerner might consider substandard conditions. But for the most part, what we found was the happiest staff were those who could live at home in their own villages, assuming proximity to the lodge was possible. The famous camp in the Luangwa Valley in Zambia, and this picture is not that large, displaying multiple safari awards, had among numerous negative impacts an open food pit behind the camp where wild animals could forage at lib amongst the garbage. We also found that they were dispelling untreated wastewater directly into natural standing water. And this of a place that proudly displays a Virgin Responsible Tourism Award. Dare we say more about greenwashing? At a tented camp in Mozambique that had among the smallest human footprint of any we visited, we asked what assistance the lodge offered to the poorest of the poor village nearby. Well, responded the general manager, who had travelled from South Africa to host us, if we see someone walking along the road, we offer to give them a lift. And that was pretty much the sum of the contribution that they gave to their community upliftment. Other than the fundamentalist church group from the American Midwest, who had arrived to hand out t-shirts and caps. So you will not find any of these places in this book. At the other end of the colour spectrum were the lodges and camps we visited during the course of our Green Safari Africa environmental assessment process, that looked out back pretty much like they looked in front. A private game reserve with one small lodge located in the poorest areas of Zimbabwe. It has just 16 beds and is not shy to advertise that it offers the very highest levels of luxury imaginable on safari. No carbon molecule had been spared to make sure its visitors never had to experience a moment of discomfort while on safari. You might think it was amongst the first to be chucked by us, and we really questioned hard whether we should even visit the place, until we looked at its conservation and community footprint, which is the largest of any similar operation in Africa, and in a country like Zimbabwe, which has gone through such hardship. It was quite incredible to see that they have a child feeding scheme which provides a daily meal to 22,000 children, which has meant that the school attendance has improved as well as did performance, as the children had the energy to learn. It's these places that you will find in this book. This was another small lodge which impressed me hugely. I gave it a 9.5 out of 10, which basically is old style. It has amazing conservation contributions, community contributions, and the operation itself is just fantastic to see. There are also other green places which did not quite meet the criteria, but with a little more effort will notably be green, and these places do get a mention in the book. The next category in the book is places not featured, but which in the fullness of time are more than likely will be featured, and these include places which were not yet open for business or which are currently going through refurbishments. Places like Wilderness Safaris, Odzala Lodge in the rainforest of the French Congo. There was another Wilderness Safaris lodge in the Nika in Mozambique, and such places. And again, some did not tick all the boxes of our 102-item survey evaluation. We hope that they learned during the Green Safari process that what they need to spur them on to greater greenness. All places featured in this book are those that scored the highest in our study, so you will not find any greenwashers amongst them. You will know them by their absence, but don't judge them all too harshly, because among them are some really wonderful places that are just not fully green yet. In the engine room behind this book, we've put together a record of sustainable and responsible tourism, where people can dig deep into how to plan, build, and run a really green ecotourism business. And it should be one where everyone and everything, the entire ecosystem, if you like, benefits. This information will be available on the website, This particular lodge in the Lagos district in Mozambique, northwest Mozambique, has an amazing community contribution. They have an agricultural project as well as a massive community conservation area. They've developed fuel-efficient stoves which help to prevent deforestation by 75% less than the traditional open fire. And when they visit some of the more rural areas in the district to try and promote these stoves, the communities are saying, don't worry, we don't need the demonstration, just how much are they? So approximately 150 potential candidate destinations were identified and assessed on site following the compilation of the self-assessment that I told you about, resulting in 51 main entrants in 14 countries and 28 other green places to visit. Unfortunately, there were no formal conservation agencies that made the final cut, like KwaZulu Wildlife or Sandparks. They didn't have any facilities recognized as being truly green, and it's a pity because it's these places that really should be leading the way. Singita Kruger Park, for instance, was doing well according to their concession agreement. They were ticking all the boxes, yet they failed dismally according to our assessment criteria. Just on the water side of things, they had water meters at every point, yet their guest allocation was 350 litres a day. And if they come near to reaching their daily allocation, it's the staff that suffer. So the big question is when will the book be out? And if you know Colin Bell, he's like a glow light. He's here, there and everywhere. It's planned that it will be out by the end of the year. The website will be live then as well. But it's all dependent on them finding the right publisher.
Thanks, Karen. I've just got one question. How do I sign up to